Man from the Dark Side. By this time, I had many experiences in Africa, doing business as they do business. Meeting with people that Frank knew was always an event. This time was no different. We were in Kampala, Uganda, when Frank received a call. He told me we were going to meet with a person he had known for a long time. He didn't provide much detail, but he did tell me that when we met with him to listen, smile, and speak only when spoken to, and focus on what he was saying, I could decide for myself whether I wanted to get involved or not. We were to meet at a small bar and restaurant located in an out-of-the-way location. It was a very quaint place, clean, well-kept, and catering to a rather upscale group of people. We went early, as Frank was a friend of the owner. We had a relaxing lunch and a couple of drinks. I was looking forward to the meeting. Just then, a shiny black, ultra-clean Cadillac arrived. 2 bodyguards got out of the car and inspected the site. The driver stayed in his seat to decide if there were any problems. He would drive away without any hesitation. Once safety was established, one of the bodyguards opened the car door. A rather large, well-dressed man stepped out of the car and walked inside. I stood up from my chair and shook his hand. My hand inside of his looked like I was a child. Small talk ensued, and then he asked if I minded a more private place to have a business discussion. We entered a room in the back through a strong, heavy door, and I could see another door in the rear which looked as if it would be used for a quick exit. He asked me a few questions about myself and mainly discussed my background. I answered the questions in detail. Once he was at least partially satisfied, he made no bones about it that I was going to get frisked by his bodyguards. He was looking for a wire or a gun or both. I'd never been frisked by strangers or anything that resembled a sound frisk. Once satisfied, he asked the question, "You've made a sizable sale to the prison system. Is that true?" I replied, "Yes." They were in the middle of building these units. He asked me how I was going to transport the equipment. I explained they would all be placed in a shipping container and driven to a facility in the U.S. where the coots would be processed through customs. From there, they would be loaded on a container ship and taken to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. From there, the container would be loaded on a truck and driven across the Serengeti for a delivery in Kigali. He asked if I had insured the shipment at 130% of its value, which was required, and I told him yes. He then said, "I have a proposal. I will give you 10,000 American dollars right now if you will hire a shipping company of my choice to carry your shipment to its destination." I've been told earlier not to ask too many questions, but I thought if I didn't ask this one question, it would be stupid. I asked him why he would give me $10,000 cash and incur the expense of shipping to handle my product. He sat back, looked at me for a second, smiled, and said, "This is how the things operate in Africa, my friend." He then explained, "You will ship the goods. I will make arrangements to pick them up and start across the Serengeti. Once outside of prying eyes, the driver will stop, get out of the truck cab, pick up a ride from a chase car, and go back to Dar es Salaam, never to be seen again. Truck will then be picked up and driven to a remote location where the product will be unloaded and sold to potential clients. Your contract is worth $350,000. I should be able to sell these for around $200,000. Meanwhile, you turn the lost product into your insurance company and receive $455,000. This most likely doubles your profit, and you'll get an extension on delivery so you can rebuild and deliver later. It's a win-win for both of us." At this point, I can't tell you how tempted I was to consider the deal. Thankfully, I regained my good sense, if I had any in the first place. I told him I had to think about it, as that's not my normal way of doing business. He told me to think all I wanted, but when he left today, a decision was to be made. Thus far in my life, everything I'd ever done, I had tried to do honestly, and had a safe remedy if I erred. I would receive maybe a slap on the wrist or a small fine of some kind. This was real, and the thought of going to jail was not a pleasant one, not in Africa. How was I going to get out of this proposition without getting shot? I took the time to think it through. Once I made my decision, I had no way out for the future sales and deliveries. I needed a story. After thinking about it, I sat back down with the man and told him this. I don't see this as a long-term way to make money. When asked why I would think that way, I told him I have any number of things I could manufacture and sell in Africa. I want to do business in Africa on a long-term basis. Doing this scam the first time out would put a big red letter on me for future efforts. There's much more money in this for both of us on a long-term basis. I told him I would do his deal, but a year from now. Let me get established as a reliable source, which I am confident you can help me with, for a price. That way, as this opportunity arises again, and it will, would just be business as usual. You can't go forever without getting a shipment hijacked. I told him a story where I once worked for a very successful contractor in Indiana. I asked him once how he was able to have an 80% repeat rate with his clients. He told me he worked on the premise. You get 'em a little, a lot. No big-time scores, just a series of small ones. You make more money in the long run, they're satisfied, and we do repeat business. He was not happy, which shook me up a little bit. Actually, more than a little bit. After a few minutes of thinking, he saw potential in what I had to say. With that, he got up without a smile, shook my hand, and told me he would investigate places where we could work together on a long-term basis. We went back to the motel, where Frank told me he hadn't expected that kind of discussion and offer. The guy is normally standoffish during the first conversation, just feeling a person out. When I turned him down, which he's not used to hearing, I was fortunate things didn't get heated. I was totally surprised that Frank had those kind of contacts. He just told me once again, this entire source of income comes from putting the right people together, not doing the actual work. I was satisfied with our meeting, and I thought I was crafty getting past that troubled point. A day later, there was an article in the local paper announcing the organization this man headed. 6 of his personal bodyguards were killed within hours of our meeting. They had suspects, but no arrests were made, as of yet. Now I've got balls, but none that big. I would never willingly speak with him again, but not to worry, as it wasn't long after that I heard he himself had been killed by one of his own bodyguards. Doing business in Africa can be very lucrative, but as you can see, it has many pitfalls.